Hello, this is Taureor and welcome back to my Europa Universalis IV guide series. And this time we're going to have a look at Denmark. Denmark is a country of a middle strength, let's say. They have a lot of opportunities to get very powerful, but they also have a lot of threats. Okay, first of all, you start, which is the most important thing, as Denmark, you start with two personal unions. It's called the Kalmar Union, and you rule over Norway and Sweden. Norway is basically just a good thing. It's gonna be helpful. However, Sweden is your biggest asset and your biggest danger, your biggest threat. Now, the problem is, Sweden will have pretty high liberty desire. You also have a vassal, Holstein, but that is less important. Sweden will have very high liberty desire because they are big and strong, actually bigger than you. So you will have to work to make them obedient. Also, you will need to annex your vassal Holstein quite soon so that you gain land. There are two ways of keeping Sweden in check. It's expanding Denmark to be stronger than them, or just placating them, keeping good relations, and so on. It's best if you combine the two methods. So, the first thing you need to do as Denmark is immediately start improving relations with Sweden. Immediately. Just right away. And keep that at a maximum. Now, you will also need to grow stronger, you will need to have high diplomatic reputation, and you will need to keep up with them on diplomatic technology. So you can't really ignore Diplotech, as I so often do. Now, you start as King Christopher III von Wittelsbach, whose stats are not very good, unfortunately, but you can't really afford to get a random noble because legitimacy and prestige will be important for you. So just wait for an heir and hope for the best. Now, enemies and allies. Everyone around you is your subject. Holstein, Norway and Sweden. You will want to annex them one by one. First annex Holstein with the annex vassal option. Then integrate Norway. You will need to wait until 1494, unfortunately, but you will be able to do so, and do the same to Sweden. Now, I believe integrating Norway first will be a better choice because you will be able to do it faster, and it will make Sweden more obedient. However, integrating Sweden first is also an option, as Norway is smaller and you can actually inherit them afterwards. Okay, now expansion and enemies. In this start, we have Hungary, England, Scotland, and Novgorod as rivals. Novgorod is actually a very good place to expand. Scotland, England, less so. It would be very beneficial to actually invade Scotland, because we could take a lot of nice territory and they don't really have friends. However, they are guaranteed by France. So what you'll need to do if you want to fight Scotland is basically wait for them to not be guaranteed by France anymore, and then you can attack and conquer some of their territory. Then from there you can move on to Ireland. If you're lucky, Norway will fabricate some claims for you that you can use, because you will be able to press their claims if you have the art of war expansion. So yeah, there's that. England, I would generally advise against engaging. However, you might want to rival them yourself so that you can get some boosts to relations. Hungary is too far away and we really don't want to be fighting them. And Novgorod is actually a good place to start our expansion. We will mostly be interested in the Teutonic Order, the Livonian Order, Riga and Novgorod as places for our expansion. Now, let's look for convenient allies. Poland is the obvious choice against the Teutonic Order, and you can also often make them friendly by rivaling their rivals. So, for example, Poland has rivals, which are Teutonic Order, Bohemia and the Ottomans. You should be able to rival the Teutonic Order. Oh, we aren't. Really? I thought they were similarly powerful. No matter. Poland will also often be an enemy of Hungary, which you should be able to rival. We will definitely want to rival Novgorod. If the Teutonic Order was an option, that would be great, but it isn't. Now, you will need to deal with those rebels in Gotland soon. However, it might be better to just wait for them to switch to a different province. Those rebels you will need to deal with them soon, but they should transport themselves to another province shortly after you, well, if you wait long enough. Or you could just attack them from the sea, but you will need to build a bigger army for that, because there's quite a lot of them, and you will have to employ enough transport ships to actually be able to attack with your whole army simultaneously. So if you want to destroy them while they're in Gotland, you'll need to get some more transport ships. So yeah, first deal with those rebels, or maybe wait for them to transfer to another province. But there's really no set rule to that, if they will transfer or just stand here. And they will need to take your capital to actually be able to succeed, so you can mostly ignore them once they stay here and then deal with them once they get out of Gotland. But when they're here, you're not getting anything good out of Gotland, so basically if you have some downtime between wars, it's a good moment to deal with them. And now, expansion. As I said, Teutonic Order, Livonian Order, Riga and Novgorod. Now, you should be able to get a mission, conquer Ussel. I think it's Ussel, yes. So that gives you an immediate casus belli against the Livonian Order. And the Livonian Order will often be allied with the Teutonic Order. Riga, give or take, they can be allied with them. Now, you can't really deal with them. I mean, you can, because you have Sweden and Norway and Holstein. You could deal with both Teutonic and Livonian orders at the same time, but that would strain your resources, and that would be difficult. So you definitely can do that, but you probably shouldn't. You should get an ally first. And I would definitely recommend someone who hates your enemies. Novgorod is hated by the Livonian Order, Muscovy, Tver, and Denmark, which is us. Now, if you can get an alliance with Muscovy, it would help you tremendously. But to do that, you would need to flip them to friendly, so you would need to improve relations with them. We will have enemy of enemy bonus, that will be slightly helpful. So yeah, you can use Muscovy as an ally against basically everyone, because they're very powerful. Another option that is recommended by me is Poland. They are not willing to get an alliance right away, but if you can get some common rivals, which would be best, or if you improve relations enough and get a royal marriage with them, they should accept an alliance with you. Unless they have rivaled you, which happens sometimes. Now, once you have an ally, as being Poland or Muscovy preferably, or maybe somebody else, you can launch an attack. Now, if you're feeling particularly confident and do not and are not bothered by too much micromanagement, you can attack them right away. But I would definitely recommend waiting and getting allies. Pomerania is an option, but they're very weak, so the Teutonic Order will beat them. I suppose you could try and use them for that, promising them land from the Teutonic Order and then not giving it to them. Danzig is a wonderful province, but once you take any of this land, you will ruin your chances for an alliance with Poland long term. They can still stay friendly with you, however, they will most likely stop liking you that much. Because when you look at Poland, they want most of this land, and when they take this land, they will want the land over here. However, you can try and juggle an alliance while having those provinces, because taking Danzig is very, very good for your economy. And so are the trade provinces over here, meaning Riga and Memel, and also Neva. A lot of your trade income will come from trading in the Lübeck trade node and in the Baltic Sea trade node. You have a lot of trade power in both of them. Well, not at the beginning, but you will. And you will be able to transfer the trade power from here to Lübeck, being able to take a lot of money from it. Now, Lübeck is actually allied to a lot of people by now, and they would do that. However, Riga starts only allied to Lübeck. So if you can attack Riga, you will be able to take that province and in turn this center of trade, which will boost your income significantly. You can't really attack them directly because you will have to deal with the Emperor defending the Holy Roman Empire, and that is not advisable, at least not at the beginning of the game, because it will cost a lot of resources. Now, conquering Riga would be much easier. However, you can't get a claim here. So your first move is to take some land from the Livonian Order, preferably all of it. if you can. And then, from there, attacking Riga, drawing the Teutonic Order, not the Teutonic Order, Lübeck into that war, and conquering them. I can't click on Lübeck for some reason. Okay, here they are. Now, you could do that in a couple of ways. For example, the Livonian Order will often rival Riga. More often they will rival ally the Teutonic Order, but often it will be both of them. So, when you attack the Livonian Order and call Riga in as co-belligerent, they will call in Lübeck, usually. Now, that will be three countries, which is fine. So, if the Livonian Order has not allied the Teutonic Order, which they usually do because they're historical friends, that should be your first course of action. Attack them. If they have allied each other, though, yeah, as I said, you will need an ally. And I recommend either Muscovy or Poland. I think that covers the initial expansion. Once you have taken over the Livonian Order's territory, focus on the coast. You don't need all of it, but the more you take, the better. You will want to expand into Novgorod, especially those two provinces that are on the coast. Especially the province of Neva, and preferably also the province of Novgorod, which has a lot of trade power. Now, that will depend on your relations with Muscovy and Poland, because if you decided to ally Muscovy, I would recommend that you forfeit all those provinces that have Russian culture, because Muscovy will like to have them very much. However, those two are Karelian, and so are those up here. This is Sami, actually. So you can easily take those provinces without really upsetting Muscovy if you're friends. They will still like them, but they won't want them that much. If you take any Russian provinces, like Novgorod itself, it will become a problem between you two. So if you want to have friends in Muscovy, you shouldn't take Russian culture provinces. I'll show you the culture map mode. Where is that? See, avoid those provinces if you want to stay friends with Muscovy. You can take those without any trouble, though. Now, same goes for Poland. If you chose to be friends with Poland, and hopefully Poland and Lithuania under the rule, you might want to forfeit Teutonic Order provinces in favor of Livonian Order, Riga, and Novgorod. If you have Poland and Lithuania on your side, you don't really have to worry about Muscovy and can actually conquer them. Again, depends on who your friends and enemies are. If you are friends with Poland and Lithuania, you can safely conquer a lot of Novgorod and then focus on actually taking Muscovy's lands and expanding far, far east. So yeah, those are the initial conquests that I recommend. Another option that you have is East Frisia. East Frisia might actually... no, they won't accept vassalization. However, they are not a member of the Empire, which is quite important. So you will be able to attack them without incurring the Emperor's wrath. They will have some allies often, but attacking them will not trigger an automatic war with the Emperor. Now, you can't join the Empire because you are too large. You could try to pull off a trick, but it's usually not worth it as Denmark. So I wouldn't recommend that. Certainly don't have it as easy as Burgundy in joining the Empire. You can expand into the Empire, yes, but you have to be very cautious about it, because taking provinces in the Empire generates a lot of aggressive expansion, and you really can't deal with the coalition of half of Germany. They are much, much more powerful than you if they band together. Because of the changes in the game since Common Sense, small nations are much more powerful than, let's say, a few small nations occupying the same territory as a big nation are a few times more powerful. Because they have basic income and basic manpower. See, base value. It doesn't depend on how big your country is. Right. Let's get back to our subjects. You will need to keep improving your relations with your subjects and annex Holstein relatively soon. Also, if your relations with Sweden are strained and it is getting close to 50% liberty desire, you will want to use... excuse me. Where is that? Oh, they removed it. There was an option to make your subjects not only vassals but also personal union members more obedient. Apparently this has been removed. Doesn't really matter. However, you will need to make sure they are loyal. So if their liberty desire is nearing 50%, you have to take action. Even if you need to send them a gift or something, you need to keep your relations good. You need to not feed Sweden, do not let it grow, and you need to grow yourself. That should be fine. Make sure that you fulfill those conditions, and a Swedish liberty, desire, and independence war should not be a problem for you. Now, when they have their liberty supported by a different country, basically you can't avoid war at that point, mostly. You will have to either attack that country or defend yourself. And if you lose Sweden as a personal union subject, you can still do quite well. However, it's not what you want, right? And if you can keep them long enough, you can actually form Scandinavia. But this is a very long shot because it needs admin tech of 20. So yeah, you will need to integrate or inherit them first. Okay, I think that concludes early expansion. Now, the HRE, you could try and become the emperor, but it is usually a late game thing for Denmark, as it will require you to vassalize a couple of electors, which is always problematic and gives you a lot of gross expansion. So usually I would not recommend that. Now, let's move on to ideas. The Danish ideas are basically not that bad. You get free legitimacy, which is fun. However, the rest is, well, some more taxes, some more naval boosts. And the two last ones are good, tolerance and national unrest. Well, the naval ideas should encourage you to invest in the navy, and Denmark can actually field a very good navy. If you get enough galleys, you will basically be unstoppable here, because nobody will be able to invade you if you have enough galleys. So yeah, that is one option to consider. However, I usually consider that a rather weak thing, all the naval boosts. So I personally don't like Danish ideas. It all depends on what you prefer. Now, as for national ideas themselves, you will certainly benefit quite a lot from trade ideas, because you have a lot of trade power in the Lubeck trade node, and you will have a lot of trade power in the Baltic Sea trade node. So you can earn tons of money using trade ideas. I definitely recommend those. You are also in a good position to do exploration, so I'd also recommend exploration ideas. It doesn't seem like you are in such a good position. However, Norway extends all the way up to Reykjavik. So, wait a minute. Your colonial range is not very impressive right now, but once you have integrated Norway, you'll be able to reach North America basically instantly. So you can even get there faster than England, if you are very lucky. Now, those are the two ideas from the diplomatic idea group. Which you want to pick first? I would probably go for trade, then something else, then exploration. Which will mean that your Diplo points will suffer, and you will probably need to focus on Diplo once you unlock the first idea group. Now, as for admin and military ideas, well, also influence is good because it will let you annex your stuff for less money, but generally I wouldn't recommend it that much. As for the admin group, I'd say humanist is a good option, because it's always a good option, especially if you decide to be friends with Poland and Lithuania against Muscovy and conquer some of their land. Humanist helps you greatly with lowering your unrest, and religious unrest will be a bit of a problem both when Reformation strikes and when Muscovy is conquered by you, because those are all different religions. So yeah, I would recommend humanist for that. Administrative, not really, unless you just want to get the first two ideas to get co-creation cost reduction and then abandon it. Religious will not be very useful. Expansion maybe if you decide to go the colonial route, but it will be mostly useful later on, so I don't recommend it early, but you can certainly make use of it later. Now, as for military ideas, I don't like the naval things, but if you really want to dominate the sea, you might consider naval ideas, or maybe even maritime ideas, but I definitely think that that's a waste of an idea group, usually. If you want to boost your fleets a little bit, you might want to go for quality ideas, because that increases your ships as well as your normal army's compatibility, and it is a very good idea group. So from the military, I would recommend quality. And as a second and third, really whatever you fancy. Offensive, defensive, and quantity are all good. Okay, I think that sums this up quite well. You can try for personal unions. Now, one thing worth noting is that as Denmark, you start with the von Wittelsbach dynasty, which is the same dynasty as the Palatinate and Bavaria. So, you can actually have royal marriages with them and make friends with them, and if they have no heir, you do have a chance of forming a personal union. They seem weak, but those provinces are very, very rich, and they can even expand over time. So if you can get additional personal unions with the Palatinate and Bavaria, that can be very helpful. And maybe your dynasty can spread to other countries as well. Now, other allies besides Poland or Muscovy. It all depends on who you can convince. However, if England is your rival at the beginning, you can make friends with France by rivaling England back. France will be reluctant to ally you because you are weaker. However, once you have rivaled England and improved relations enough and maybe established a royal marriage, France should be an option. And France is very likely to become much more powerful when the Burgundian inheritance triggers. And so is Austria. Now, an alliance with Austria is also a problem because they will be very angry if you start taking imperial territory. But if you don't do that at the very beginning and maybe have some common rivals with them, forming an alliance will not be that difficult. For example, Burgundy. Well, Burgundy can be an ally as well, but they usually get destroyed by the Burgundian inheritance event. So, rivaling Burgundy might actually be a good idea, because both France and Austria will often rival Burgundy. Not always, though. France and Austria will not always rival them. Austria is actually an option for an alliance with Burgundy. However, if they do, you might consider rivaling Burgundy just to get into good graces, and when you have a common rival with Austria, they will be much more likely to accept an alliance with you, thus increasing your stability and your strength in the area. They might even help you against the Teutonic Order, though that is very unlikely because you won't be able to amass enough favors in that time. However, they should guarantee your safety from outside threats and can even be helpful if an independence war triggers on the side of Sweden. Yeah, I think I've said everything I wanted to for Denmark. Okay, I hope you enjoyed it and I hope it was helpful. Just remember, this is the best area to expand early and leave the Holy Roman Empire alone, at least for now, unless you have an option to take or vassalize Lübeck without too much bloodshed. Okay, I think that's it. Remember to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you soon. Goodbye.